WrestleMania is on the brink of cancellation. The crucial wording here is that it's currently on the brink of cancellation. As of right now, it's still going ahead, but it is not looking good for it to actually take place on April 5th, like it's been advertised, like it's been built towards on Raw and SmackDown and even NXT. WWE's biggest show of the year is currently going to go ahead, according to the Tampa Bay and Florida Department of Health officials. They had a meeting, they just got out of it about 20 minutes after from when I'm recording this now, and they have effectively cancelled a number of large-scale events in the area in Florida, in Tampa Bay. They have cancelled the St. Patrick's Day parades, which I believe are meant to go ahead around March 17th. It's likely that Trump will not be doing his Tampa rallies in the area either. And this is all to stop large groups of people coming together, being in the same place where they can more exponentially spread this coronavirus outbreak that has spread across the world and has, as of this week, quarantined pretty much the entire of Italy, and Ireland have cancelled school today, that no kids can go to school there. And the South by Southwest has been cancelled. Coachella has been postponed till October. This is serious stuff. But as Dave Meltzer has continually said on Wrestling Observer Radio, WWE and Vince McMahon, as we know with their business practices and Saudi Arabia, that they will press ahead, sort of in spite of global pressures and ill will. There was so much negativity on the Saudi Arabia deal with WWE following the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in November 2018. But 3 weeks later, WWE still ran their crown jewel event there and put on a big show, sort of in defiance, because Vince McMahon has his way apparently, and why should these real world events affect what I'm doing? I think if it's up to him, he would still press ahead with WrestleMania regardless. But in reality, the decision is out of his hands, because if the local government or indeed the national government say, no, you cannot put on these events anymore because we're trying to stop this exponentially growing outbreak and the spread of disease amongst people, then they're going to cancel it for him. And that is pretty much what was said in the meeting if you read between the lines. They cancelled the St. Patrick's Day parade. They cancelled a number of other events. But when they came to WrestleMania, first of all, they said that WWE, it sort of was tweeted out that WWE were going to hold their own press conference, and then that never happened, and PW Insider are now reporting that that announcement of the announcement was a mistake. The press conference for that Tampa Bay meeting, where WrestleVotes are reporting Vince McMahon was actually in attendance. That's how serious this is. And imagine having an angry Vince standing over your shoulder as you're trying to calmly debate whether or not to go ahead with things, and he's just there saying, WrestleMania, WrestleMania. A guy who famously hates sneezing. He hates sneezing backstage. If you sneeze in front of him, apparently he goes furious because it is a sign that you cannot control your own body, that your body has some form of agency over you. Apparently he shaves every day because he doesn't want to let the beard win. He feels that the hair growing naturally out of his face is in some way in defiance of his just masculine aura. That's a legit story from Mick Foley. So imagine that there's sort of an irony here that the ultimate sneeze, this really serious version of the flu, could potentially cancel the biggest show of the year for WWE. Now, the exact wording of the press conference live stream thing from the Florida Department of Health officials was that right now we've decided not to pull the plug. Right now, that means. And we are giving them a week, them being WWE, to see if WWE do anything about the situation in this time. If they don't, we will reconvene in a week's time for another emergency meeting to talk about next steps. To me, and this is my speculation, that sounds like, all right, we won't cancel it right now for you, but you've got a week. You've got a week to figure out what you're going to do about WrestleMania, because it's not going ahead, because it's dangerous. So we'll have to find out in about a week's time if WWE don't take the precautionary step of announcing it before then. Of course, there's SmackDown tomorrow. And news today, if you go and watch that, were about the reports that SmackDown won't go ahead where it's going to take place. Instead, they're going to film it at the WWE Performance Center, funnily enough, also in Florida. It's weird how so much has sort of coalesced around that state for WWE. Speaking of, the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, has said all mass gatherings in Florida in the next 30 days should be postponed or cancelled. So that's sort of his personal opinion, but that's what he said as an address. And if the governor's saying it and all these events are being cancelled, you've got to think that that's sort of the polite foreshadowing announcement of, yeah, indeed, stuff getting cancelled, because we're not going to let you run those events because it poses a danger to everyone in this large community. This ties into the other thing that flights from mainland Europe, so not the UK, they're no longer allowed to fly to the US. WrestleMania is a huge international traveling crowd. You get a lot of German fans, a lot of French fans. They can now no longer make WrestleMania. And who knows if that is going to be instilled in the UK as well. It's only a matter of time before us here, if you want to peek behind the curtains, we are now only traveling into this office where we record stuff in this studio for essential things. So like right now, like this video. If you don't have to record a video, you work from home. So it really is a serious thing that everyone needs to kind of take responsibility and remove themselves as much from society and elderly people to not unintentionally spread this disease further. The stock has, interestingly, not plummeted as much as expected. WWE has seen a few substantial hits on their overall market cap over the last few months. First with the Saudi show on October 31st, and strangely enough, The Fiend winning the Universal title. I don't think that had anything to do with it, but that wiped off about 10%. Then you had George Barrios and Michelle Wilson suddenly being fired from out of nowhere at the end of January. That wiped off 22% of WWE's market capitalization. As of right now, in the last few days, well, as of right now compared to yesterday, 12% of, well, it was 13% an hour ago. 13% of WWE's stock market value was wiped out. Now, actually, after that announcement, it's bounced back a bit. So it's bounced back about 1 or 2%, presumably because the markets think that WrestleMania might go ahead. I don't think it will do, though. So what does this mean? What does this mean for SmackDown, for Raw, for NXT, the build-up, for all the independent wrestling shows and independent wrestlers who are traveling to the States to do shows around WrestleMania that weekend? Ring of Honor's Supercard of Honor show. Impact Wrestling are bringing back TNA for one night only on the Friday. You've got the Hall of Fame ceremony, NXT TakeOver. This is a huge, obviously the global impacts of this are absolutely enormous and far more important than our little wrestling bubble. But if we just bring it down to our little niche, this is catastrophic. When has ever anything of this magnitude happened to this industry in one big effect? I remember a couple of years ago when Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns got I can't remember, it was like a stomach bug thing, and they couldn't compete on the TLC show. That's why Kurt Angle had to come back and join the Shield. And Finn Balor had to face AJ Styles instead. That felt like a huge deal at the time. Like, when has this ever happened? This is cancelling WrestleMania. That's an important thing, actually. We should probably say WrestleMania likely won't be cancelled, it will be postponed. So maybe it's moved to 2 months after. Heaven forbid, maybe it's moved to Saudi Arabia. Who knows? But yeah, what does that mean for Goldberg? Are we going to get Goldberg as the Universal Champion for 2 to 3 months before we get to WrestleMania and the blow-off match with Reigns? Does WWE just sort of do all this on TV? Are they even going to run TV? Is it going to be more of sort of video packages and a studio-based show? Maybe they play some documentary documentary series from the network. I don't know what's going to happen. Empty arenas really don't work that well. It's kind of fascinating from a 28 days later perspective, but after a while, it's not going to make people tune in. You want to make the most dynamic programming possible. So maybe the answer is the Performance Center. It's a shame they just released Broken Matt Hardy because his gimmick is entirely tailored towards this more cinematic, no-audience version of wrestling. But yeah, Undertaker versus AJ. Cena versus The Fiend. John Cena's movie schedule is going to be delayed and warped. Will he be available for WrestleMania? Because I'm sure he's going to prioritize the movie stuff that's coming out, and if that's all been delayed too, and he has to go and do that stuff, I think he's going to be, sorry WWE, I've got the Suicide Squad coming out, so I can't wrestle at WrestleMania. Who knows? There's also the Randy Orton Edge stuff. Is that something that can be paid off on TV instead of the biggest show of the year? This hasn't just affected WWE, of course. AEW is similarly in trouble. They haven't got any big shows coming up until May's Double or Nothing, but they do have 2 big TV events over the next 2 weeks, over the next 2 Wednesdays. Next week's is in Rochester. That's apparently where Luke Harper, the now named Brody Lee, was meant to be debuted, potentially as the Dark Order's Exalted One leader. But the Rochester sort of closed council, I don't know how you organize your local governments in the US, guys, they said that events above 50 people or 500 people or more will not be permitted in New York State. AEW Dynamite tapings do thousands. So either they scale it back massively and it's in front of a 250 person crowd, or you don't put it on either, and you run some kind of the Road 2 shows or some Being the Elite stuff, or maybe the Broken Matt Hardy stuff. It is scary times, make no doubt about it, and take care of yourself, wash your hands, and try and just quarantine yourself as much as possible, even if you don't have it. You might have it and not experience any symptoms, so the best thing to do right now to halt the spread of this amongst our communities is to just stay at home as much as possible. Avoid public transport, avoid large gatherings. Definitely don't go and see your elderly relatives because they are far more susceptible to the perils of the disease. However, if we step back from that for a moment, this is an incredibly historically fascinating event. I love to sort of look, you know, when you look back at events in history and you go, wow, I wonder what it was like to live through that, to live through like a World War II or a Cuban Missile Crisis. This is happening right now. And as morbid as it is spectacularly interesting. What is going to happen next? At the start of the year, we were more concerned with, is SmackDown going to resolve the dog food storyline? And now here we are. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think WrestleMania is going to get cancelled? I think it is. And we'll try and have a debate about it there. Me and Luke will be back tomorrow with the WrestleTalk podcast, which will undoubtedly have a lot of this in. And we've got a very special announcement kind of tied into all of this as a way to, I don't know, help the wrestling industry. But yeah, please give us a subscribe if this is your first time watching this channel. And yeah, stay safe, guys.